Hey, let's talk about sex ed, baby. We got lots to talk about with sex education in schools, in public schools, and people in position and power really wanting to not only get in our bedrooms, but get in teenagers' classrooms and take away important things that they need to know about sex because why? They're scared of sex? Christian nationalism? I don't know why, but it's freaking terrible. We're going to talk all about that. If you are concerned about these extremists in power in your state, across the country, listen to what Corinne has to say. She's freaking amazing. She's going to teach us about it. And we're going to really dive into what do we do to stop it. And we did stop some terrible crap this week, too. We're going to talk about that as well. Welcome to Plots and Politics. Badass, amazing friend, Corinne Straight. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right, Sarah. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, girl. I'll tell you what, it has been a
Uh,
week.
it has been a week. We are in Indiana, y'all, and our legislative session actually just ended in the early morning hours last night. So it was about 2 in the morning, I think, that Indiana legislators adjourned for the year. We only have a part-time legislature. Now they will do summer study committees and fall study committees, but for now, the session is over and it was a doozy. And there is so much to catch up on and read up on. Everybody's kind of been doing their best to cover it, but it was kind of what we expected it to be, but there were a couple of shiny moments, let's say.
We were able to stop some of the most terrible. A lot of terrible was passed. I want to
Yep.
shout out Mad Voters. I want to
Oh,
shout out
for real.
Kelly DeLong, Katie Richter, if I'm saying her last name right, all the people on Mad Voters that dedicate countless hours to paying attention to what's going on at the state legislature so we can stop some of the worst of it. You know, they wanted everything to pass, and until we stop extremism and until we stop one party rule, this is what we have to do.
This is what we're stuck with. And one of the victories that we did get this session is directly related to our topic today. And Indiana likes to propose adjustments to the sex education curriculum every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Really for no reason. There really wasn't anything they were attempting to fix with this current version of sex ed. Sex ed in Indiana is already abstinence focused. It is parents have the opportunity to opt their kids out. Certain elements are not required. A lot of it is left up to individual school boards. And this bill was really complicated and unnecessarily complicated. It didn't need to be introduced at all. And it seems like the purpose of this legislation was to align Indiana more closely with some of the pro-life organizations at a national level, because the one of the elements of the bill requires students to watch a video on human development in utero. And that sounds very innocuous on the surface, but I would encourage you to go to YouTube and check out some of these videos. The most popular one is called Baby Olivia. It has over 9 million views. It was put together by a pro-life organization. It is medically inaccurate. It is pro-life propaganda. And it shows a little baby. They named it Olivia. And I, just from a marketing perspective, also find the use of the name Olivia to be, it's very calculated, because if you go look up the most popular girl name in the US for the last, 7 years, it's Olivia. So
Wow.
it's very deliberate.
Calculated. Yeah.
Yep. They chose a
Plans.
little girl because that's even more innocent in the eyes of this Christian society.
We're the weaker sex.
We're the weaker ones. We're the vulnerable. And they're going to pick a name that people can relate to because, oh my gosh, I know an Olivia down the street. I know my niece is an Olivia, right?
What
So it's like, it's so calculated. And this video shows this baby, it's a fetus, pretty much being sentient and speaking English inside the womb. Like, it's the baby's waving. It's doing things that like a 6-month-old would do after it's born in utero. It's making this fetus a sentient thing. And what's even more problematic is because this is clearly an anti-abortion video. And we know is 97, 98% of all abortions happen before 15 weeks. If they happen after 15 weeks, it's
because
because
something's happened to
something
the
horrible
fetus,
happened,
something
right?
terrible,
You do
right?
not have a bubbly, smiley, waving fetus that somebody is just going to voluntarily terminate. That literally doesn't happen. That is a conservative talking point attempting to fearmonger about this. So, although the video is not named in the legislation, other states have passed similar legislation, and that Baby Olivia video is the one that students watch. So I would encourage you to watch it with your kids. If your
So
kids
you're
are,
saying the kids in Indiana are watching this?
they will. They
They
will.
will be
Yes,
watching it.
because that stayed in the bill. So students will have to watch some kind of video presentation on human development in utero. And the Baby Olivia video, because they claim because it's made by a medical organization, which is like OBGYNs for life. So because it's made by doctors, they believe it gives credibility. It's very manipulative. It's very
Yeah.
manipulative. You know,
And we see
every,
that a lot with this Christian nationalist movement, which is what we talked about in Plots and Politics last Friday, you all. It was fascinating. You should
yep.
listen. How good they are at manipulating our children, because our children are sitting in school listening to teachers assuming that they're being told 100% correct information. And
Mm-hmm.
here our government is telling them we should be showing them fake propaganda.
Yep.
So we can counteract this, you all. If you are parents and you are listening and you have teenagers that are going to be having sex education taught in their public schools, just by opening up a dialogue with them and
Mm-hmm.
saying, let me know when you're being taught this, and if you see this video, let me know. We can talk about it, or you can just talk about it before and say this is not accurate, and you could maybe show them some correct things about what a fetus looks like in the
Yep.
womb.
And because you and I have I have kids that are older, you have one that's older, and a couple that are younger. And I remember when this permission slip came home for both of my kids on what kind, did I want to opt them out or opt them in? I wasn't really worried about sex education because, I mean, talking about sex ed, age appropriate sex education, really just understanding, appreciating, protecting their bodies, caring for their bodies, consent, blah, blah, blah. All of that has been part of my dialogue with my kids since they were very young. It wasn't something I sprung on them when they when they became teenagers and like dropped a birds and the bees bomb. That's not how I did it. And so I knew that what they were going to get in school was going to be very different than what they knew from me. But I have boys. I have two boys who I really wanted to appreciate the level of understanding of sex that their peers may have. Because if they are going into a situation assuming that everyone has the same understanding of consent and privacy and intimacy and whatever that they do, that could put them in some situations to get them in trouble. I wanted them to understand that they may be interacting with peers who do not have that level of understanding. If this is all they're getting at school, I felt like they needed to know that. So that was my call, even though I knew it wasn't going to undo any of the stuff that I taught them. I wanted them to be able to say, oh, I'm probably coming in with more knowledge than a lot of the kids in my class.
So I've taught sex ed for fifth grade for many years, probably 16 years. Um, Fifth grade, I think, is a good starter course, but then I think you need another one, maybe like eighth grade, and then maybe like another one in like high school. I think
Yeah.
there should be like levels of sex ed instead of just one basic fifth grade class. I don't think that's enough because you don't want to tell a 10 and 11-year-old everything.
Yeah.
And then it just needs to be age appropriate, but you need to prepare them for their body changing. So that's what I did as a fifth grade teacher. I think what we need to realize now, if you are living in a state with extremism in charge, and if they are passing laws like ours are trying to do in Indiana, we need to be the ones teaching. The parents need to be the ones teaching the children. Do not
Mm-hmm.
just assume that your kid is getting complete 100% great sex ed in the classroom, and just tell them. I
Mm-hmm.
remember listening to a Michelle Obama podcast during the pandemic, and she had a whole episode about this. And she said, if you're not telling your kids the truth about sex, they're getting it from the internet or their friends, and they're getting wrong information. So what do you
Absolutely.
want? Do you want them to think fake things, or do you want to be a little embarrassed and tell them the truth? And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the pandemic year when my son was getting virtual school. So I know he wasn't getting it through the virtual school,
Yeah.
and I taught it myself. So I felt pretty comfortable. So I took him on a hike. I walked in front of him so I didn't have to look at him. And he had been asking, because he's like really smart little scientist. He'd been asking for years for information on how babies were made. He really wanted to know. And so I just didn't look at him, and we just walked an hour, and I told him everything I knew and that was appropriate for his age, for an 11-year-old. And he asked me questions, and some of them I didn't know the answer to. I went home and looked them up and then told him later,
Mm-hmm.
because some of them were about guy stuff.
Yeah.
And that was really, I'm really glad I did that. And I
Yep.
honestly, I have Michelle Obama to thank for that, because I hadn't thought about it. I wasn't planning on doing that to my own child, but we need somebody that we trust. If you are a parent and don't feel comfortable, do you know an educator, a teacher? Do you know anybody that does feel comfortable that would give accurate information?
Yep.
And do you want to talk about the thing we're planning for a show?
Yes. So Sarah and I are actually both passionate about sex education. And my perspective as a parent and Sarah's perspective as an educator, I have kind of just always been the person. I think it's because of how I was brought up in an environment where we didn't really talk about it. I definitely overcorrected on this one and swung that pendulum to the other side with my kids and made sure it was something we talked about from a really early age. And yeah, Sarah and I are going to do a show where we do sex ed, where we talk about sex ed from a full comprehensive standpoint. We will kind of break down some of the age appropriate things, but we will start from the basics, because sex education is not just, and I think maybe we could come up with another word for it too, because sex education, when somebody hears sex ed and they hear 5-year-olds, consent, and they hear 5-year-olds, they think it's indoctrination or somebody is pushing a sexual agenda onto children. But when you look at the littlest kids, if they understand consent and they understand protecting their body, it's going to protect them from predators. And that is a key piece of consent. Maybe we just call it consent education at that age, and then don't call it sex ed till they get older or something. Maybe it just like freaks people out. But the idea that oh, Sarah, I lost you. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Are you back?
Sorry.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So maybe at a younger age, we call it like consent ed or something, and then as they get older, it becomes sex ed. Because I think sex ed is, I will never forget one of my high school classmates, awesome dude. He is a teacher in our area. He has been a coach for a long time, and he's also on our school board. And when he was running for school board just this last November, one of the attack ads run against him by one of these like Purple for Parents conservative groups, very akin to Moms for Liberty group. One of the talking points they were using to attack him is calling him a groomer because he taught sex ed as part of
That's
his job.
disgusting. The groomer thing is absolutely disgusting.
And it's like,
we're
no,
trying to
he's
protect
doing his job.
We're trying to protect children so they understand real things about our bodies. They think they're protecting children by not talking about it because they're scared to talk about it.
Yep.
And then other people are manipulating that fear and telling people that good people are groomers. So I get why people are so scared to talk about it because of that.
Because as soon as you talk about it, you're accused. When really not talking about it is protecting predators and making it easier for predators to access children, especially if your children are spending time with adults in athletic settings, in club settings, and Boy Scout settings, youth group settings, etc. All places where there is a power dynamic that is integrated.
Where you're told to trust the adult no matter what.
Yes, that adult is always right.
Unless you let your kid know. Like, so I went to a sex ed training through my school when I had only been a teacher for a few years, and it was like an all day training, and it was an expert that came, and he said these tips for consent when your kids are little. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you all the best things he said, and I use them with my daughter. He said when they're babies and another person is changing their diaper, you say before they change their diaper, this is your aunt so and so. This is a trusted person that's okay to change your diaper. You go ahead and let them know when it's okay and when it's not. So I started doing this at the doctor because our doctor looks at their private areas to make sure everything is okay. Before he does it, I say, this is our doctor and this is a safe person to do this, but you let me know other people are not safe to do this. So when they're very little, all the way from diaper age up until now, they're 6.5. I say this every time we go to the doctor. My daughter has told me before she didn't want to give an older man a hug that asked for one. And I was like, sweetheart, you do not have to hug anybody you don't want to have to hug. And I was like, you just come and tell me and I'll handle it. And I'll say, oh, she's not feeling like a hug right now, but thank you. And to let her, and then I say, it's your body. And then I say that to my other kids, it's your body. It's your choice. So she's used that before. She said, it's my body, it's my choice. So I just gave her the language to say no, because older people are in different generations. I'm sure they don't have any ill intent on my children, but they haven't learned that language that sometimes little ones don't want to hug. So
Yep.
I gave that to her. I'm not going to go teach the person that asked. I don't know them enough for them to listen to me, but I'm going to teach my daughter, oh honey, you don't have
Yep.
to hug anybody you don't want to hug.
Yep.
And you can even tell it to them. Oh, I don't feel like a hug right now, but thanks.
Yep.
Like just give them the language,
Yep.
because that's consent. That
And
is the
that's
appropriate way.
it's so basic. I mean, I did something similar with my kids, like when they started preschool or went to daycare, and it was, they can help you in the bathroom if something happens. It's okay. You can ask them for help. They are a trusted adult, and it had nothing to do with sex. These are kids that do not
It's just
understand
who's
sex.
allowed to look at your body and who's not.
Yes.
And that's something they need to know so they have the tools if somebody looks at their body that shouldn't, that they know to come to you and tell you.
Hmm.
What are the statistics? They're so bad on
Oh,
the
they're so
amount
bad.
of people that have been sexually abused.
Hmm.
I mean, it's like 1 in 4. It's different for guys and
I think
girls.
it's 1 in 3 for women and 1 in 5 for men, I believe. I
Yeah, I
can,
think
you
that's
know
right.
what?
I
We
just
have
read
the
it.
internet, Sarah.
You
Let me
can look
just
it up,
look
but
it
I
up.
just read
Yep.
it and I think you're right. But yeah, look it up and double check, because we weren't giving these children the tools to say no and to be vocal about it. We were being silent. We have allowed so many of our friends and family that we know to have been sexually assaulted at a young age. And
Hmm.
and I know a lot. I've had a lot of friends share with me. Um then they don't give details, they just say it happened, and my heart goes out to them. So,
Yeah.
to protect your own child, you say, I've told my daughter, "Oh, she spilled apple juice all over her outfit." It's okay if the school nurse helps you get changed. It's
Yep.
okay if the school
It's
nurse
okay.
doesn't help you, but that school nurse is a trusted person. I've talked to that nurse on the phone several times. I know her, she's great. And then letting her know, but people you don't know that aren't, that's when
Yep.
you say no and you come and you tell me, and you
Hmm.
come and you tell your dad. Um, you come and you
And
tell a teacher, a trusted person.
and when you start to have those conversations, you your kid is going to start to act differently out in the world, which is what you want them to do, because you're sending them into spaces where you are not there. And to be able to differentiate between somebody who's safe and somebody who isn't is so important, whether it's touching, whether it's coercion, whether it's trying to take you somewhere you don't want to go. So this is really important, and it continues to frustrate me. I know this is a frustration that we share, Sarah, of being in a conservative state where you have a lot of people who claim to want to protect kids. This is all about kids, right? We can't
Yep.
have them see drag
Yep.
because we have to protect them. We can't have them see,
It's so scary.
they're so scary. We can't have them we can't have them understand sex because we have to protect them. Because if they understand sex, they're going to have it. And that's not us protecting them. Like, it's just a constant loop of nonsense to try to reinforce what their logic is. And really, if you cared about protecting your kids, you would be teaching them consent and safety from the time they were
And I
babies.
know parents do care, they just don't know. That's why we're having the
They,
show. They
yep,
don't
they
know
don't
what to do.
understand.
I literally didn't know to say the thing about the diaper until an expert told me.
Yeah.
I didn't know. He also told me that the predators, they imitate good people. They imitate good coaches, good teachers, and they get in there and they act like a trusted adult, and they work hard to get
Mhm.
parents that are very busy,
Yep.
that are overworked, that would appreciate some help. They work hard to gain those people's trust and then offer rides, offer things for the kids to get them alone. So kind of be on the lookout for that.
For
Like,
those
look on
people.
the
Yeah.
lookout for predators. They're out there. We
Mhm.
know they are. And, I'm not letting a strange coach take my children home. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure I really know the person before they do that. So be on the lookout. If somebody very early on is wanting to get your child alone, make sure you're talking to your child and make sure that you're saying no and not
Yep.
letting that happen. And they prey on the most vulnerable. They
Yep.
prey on the single moms that are working two jobs, that aren't, they prey on the single parents that are struggling, or if financially things are tough, those are the people that they're looking for because they know you're too busy and stressed out to notice.
Yeah.
And letting our children know about them. I always say most people are good. This probably is never going to happen, but just so you know, and I don't want to scare the crap out of them. Like, I
Yeah.
haven't told my 6-year-olds this, but I've told my 15-year-old this when he was older. Let them know what these people do to prey on people, because they are out there. They're pretending to be great people. They're coaches, they're assistants, they're volunteers, they're teachers. There are some of them. Most people are fantastic, but they're modeling that because that's their goal.
Yep. And I was just looking up some statistics so we can be accurate
Thanks.
here. So I definitely was off, but
Oh, okay.
but that's
I thought
okay.
you were
That's why
right.
we have the internet. We're not afraid to be
Thanks for
wrong. We
checking.
we educate ourselves, right? If we're wrong. So for women throughout their lifetime, it's like 1 in 6. For men throughout their lifetime, it is about 1 in 30. But and these are statistics from RAIN, which is the Rape Network something. So it's a trusted organization, but they do acknowledge that both for women and especially even more so for men, underreporting is a huge problem. So 1 in 30 for men, that's probably higher. 1 in 6 for women, it's probably higher.
Yeah. And that's the way
Because
your
yeah,
brain processes that trauma. Your
yeah,
brain
a lot
tries
of
to
people
act
don't
like it didn't
report.
happen. And a lot of times it takes years. It'll be like 10 years later before somebody says what happened.
Yeah.
I want to share with you a horror story of one of my friends that I won't name who. One of my friends shared with me that she was never taught sex ed ever. And so she was like a young teenager, and she was assaulted by a man in like a truck,
Hmm.
and she did not know what happened to her for years because
Yeah.
nobody had told her what sex was. So she didn't even know what happened. So the trauma was just like this long years process of her figuring out once she got older. And I'm like, oh wow, this is why we've got to educate our
Hmm.
children as they develop, age appropriate. She didn't even have the language to know what was happening to say no.
Yeah.
She didn't even
That's
know what
very
was happening.
Yeah, and that's very another piece of these statistics that really jumped out to me is the majority of victims of sexual assault and violence, girls and boys, are between the ages of 12 and 17. That's the majority. So the majority of cases are happening in that age group, and that is because you are getting naive children. You are getting
You
naive.
getting
Yeah.
children that
Yes.
don't know. You
And if
protect your
you're
children by telling them. Yeah.
And if you're a trusted adult who's known that kid since they were 8, maybe you've been playing the long game and putting in the time to invest. So then they are a prime target for you, for a predator. So this is why the conversation does not have to be about intercourse at this age. And as the kids get older and their bodies start to change, that's when you can start having leading up to that, you start having different conversations. But the consent piece is so important because it not only protects kids from things they don't want, but then it protects you as an adult from other things that you don't want, whether that is a sexual situation or any other kind of situation.
Just realizing you have power over your own
Yes, your
body. They
autonomy
don't
is
get to tell,
critical.
even though they're a trusted adult and they're older and supposedly wiser, they don't control your body.
Hmm.
That is such an important lesson that
Yep.
our children need to know. Yeah. Can
Yeah.
I talk about what my state senator, I didn't vote for him, but
Oh,
the
I was
one
going to
I'm
say
stuck with,
that's our segue, the
can we
consent
talk
right
about
into
Gary
what
Byrne?
good old Gary did. Good God, Gary.
So Gary Byrne lives pretty close to me. I see him at events from time to time with his Make America Great Again hat on and his fancy, he wears a nice outfit and he goes around and he works the crowd. I give him credit. Our state senator gets out there and talks to the people. A lot of them don't. So at least he does that. He this week he tried to sneak in a little amendment to sex education this week at Indiana State Senate. He tried to eliminate the word consent from being taught in sex education classes. So we just spent the first 20 minutes here talking about how important it is that we teach kids at an age appropriate level consent, whether it's a hug, a kiss, hand holding, anything. He tried to get it out. People were like, they were asking him questions. We have like Mad Voters help document this. You can go to Mad Voters. There's Gary Byrne. That's
This is
our
Gary
state
Byrne.
senator.
Yep.
They asked him, why are you doing this? He could not tell a reason why. We don't know why. You and I kind of think maybe it's the right to life propaganda. They told him to do it, to try it. We don't know. It could have been his own thing. I think he might have Christian nationalist views. I think he really might think he's protecting children. I don't know what's in this man's head, but he tried it. And thankfully, volunteers were paying attention and they blew it up online. I shared it all over my stuff. You
Yep.
talked about it. And so many people in his district, which is my district, emailed and called and met him in person and blew up his phone that he took it down. And they made
Yep.
an email message that they shared out to everybody. I shared that email message saying he has taken that out.
Yep.
So that was
And I want
horrible.
to read the
Read it.
language real quick because I have
Sure.
the email
Oh,
up.
good. Go
And
for it.
so he replies and says, "Thank you for taking the time to write in and express your concerns. We have heard numerous concerns from Hoosiers all across the state, and keeping these in mind, we have decided to reinstate the consent language into SB 442, which is huge. So just like because you called, we put the language back in because I really liked the way that that email was worded because it really gave credit to the people that called all around the state. And the perception that Indiana is such a backwards, conservative, hopelessly MAGA, whatever you want to call it, state is just absolutely not true. The makeup of our legislature is a result really of gerrymandering, special influence money, huge conservative donors. It is not a result of who the people of Indiana are, because when given a chance, we don't have ballot initiatives in Indiana, y'all. We don't get to do popular votes on
They took that away
anything.
from us a while ago.
So when we have a chance to voice our opinion, we voice it on the side of common sense, on the side of consent, which honestly, that's the bare minimum. It's the bare minimum.
It's going to take years to stop these people. It's not like we can fix this in a year and a half. We can stop some of it. Some counties that are right on the border between red and blue, we can stop some of it there. But this shows public pressure works. We didn't stop everything. You and I are still mourning the loss of all of the things that are getting passed and getting signed into law right now. But we stopped some of the worst. Mad Voters help with that. Thank you, Mad Voters. And everybody that made their own content on social media, that talked to friends and neighbors, that called Gary Byrne's office or emailed or blew up his phone. Thank you. Thank you.
You did
Thank
that.
You.
You did it. You actually made a difference. And when you look at a state like Indiana, and there were some other stats that I wanted to pull up, you kind of had the feeling and you have an understanding that like, oh, comprehensive sex ed feels like it's important. What happens if we don't have it?
Oh yeah, let's
And
talk about that.
yeah, and it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that in places where sex ed is limited, greatly restricted, abstinence focused, doesn't talk about contraception, in those places, they have the highest rates of STI and the highest rates of unintended pregnancies and teen pregnancies. So that is part of the disconnect, because you have a community, a conservative community, that claims to not want abortion, but also doesn't want to invest in anything that would prevent unwanted pregnancies or unintended pregnancies. And the lack of information is actually making students sick. They are contracting STIs at a higher rate in these places because they do not understand condoms. They do not understand transmission. They do not understand how any of that works. I mean, these are basics. And they have no defense. And so when we look at something like what you said, Sarah, with Senator Gary Byrne, his response when he was being questioned, why are you taking out consent? He kept responding, local control. This is about local control. We want local school boards to figure it out. But we have to remember that legislative bodies are not just enacting legislation to create law, they are communicating their values. What does the state of Indiana value? And it was a huge blow for him to say, as a legislative body, we do not value consent. And the reason he had no response for that, or really no defense, is most likely because this was a talking point coming from a national organization, which is where a lot of this legislation originates. You can find very similar language talking about the video, for example, talking about consent, talking about contraception. You can find very, very similar language because some of these bills are crafted by a national organization and given to certain state legislators all
We
across
talked
the country.
Yes, you're exactly right. I talked about this with Josh Lowry yesterday on my Get the Word Out show. Josh
Yep.
Lowry is one of our top Indiana Democrats fighting extremism, and I'm really thankful for him. And I was thankful he came on. He
Yeah,
was
same.
explaining it's like a 50-year plan, very well documented, organized, shared. Here's the talking points. You do this. And
Yep.
so Gary, I believe, was
And if
Gary
you
Byrne was
do
just picking
this,
up orders. He was
you
just
get,
doing what he was told. He
yeah,
didn't know why he was doing it. He couldn't come up with a good explanation other than let's just let school boards decide whether our kids learn about consent, because he's following orders. We have to
yeah.
get people in power that do what's right for the people. And we don't have that in Indiana right now.
And
We
that's
have a
where it
few people doing the
tips.
best, but it's not enough.
It's not enough because that's where it tips, right? Somebody like Gary Byrne, and I'm certainly not calling him out personally, because all elected officials in either party, no matter where they sit on the spectrum, are beholden to donors. They're beholden to donors. And when somebody reaches out and says, here you go, Senator Byrne, here's this legislation, you know, whether they say it or it's implied, campaign donations are tied to the way Senator Byrne acts on that piece of legislation. So he's making a calculation when he is getting this flurry of phone calls. He is making a calculation between which of these two groups is actually going to threaten my job. Is it going to be the constituents or is it going to be the donors? And with enough phone calls, the constituents outweighed the donors because it has to be a lot. The money that they get from these campaign contributions from these special interest groups are huge. It funds their campaigns. It gives them an arsenal to go into an election. Even in districts where they're not that competitive, they still want a big financial arsenal. So he was actually able to say, the constituents are going to cost me my job on this one because they're pissed off. So
And
that's like the power of those calls.
he's in my district. I'm in Harrison County. If you are in Harrison County, Clark County, Floyd County, Washington County, I believe those are the main counties that his state senate district, and you would like to run against him, please message me. Please reach out to me. I'm looking for someone that wants to represent the people. If you are a Republican and you'd like to primary him, that's in 1 year. That would be really good. You're going to need to reach out to your Republican party of your county or the district, maybe. I don't know how states, and I don't know the exact specifics, but reach out to them to maybe primary. Let's get someone that doesn't listen to money and donors, and let's get someone listens to the majority of the people. If we went around and I talked to every single voter in his district, I'm pretty sure the majority of people would want consent taught in sex education. If we told each person that he's defunding public education and taking millions of money from our county schools and dumping it into charter and private schools in other areas like Indianapolis, I believe most people would be against it. It's just that most people don't know because they do it so silently. They do
Yeah.
the damage so quietly. So yeah, I'm looking for some really good people to challenge Gary Byrne in our next election, guys. He's up. He's on the ballot.
And we are like a year and 2 weeks away from the 2026 primary, y'all. So I mean,
We don't have that long till
no,
that primary.
no,
We got to
and
get
that
as
year
many
is,
people running on the ballot
yeah.
as possible. That is so important. We, the people, must take back our state. This is how we do it. You don't have to know anything about politics. We will teach you. All you need to know is what he is doing is wrong, and you're not going to let money influence you like these people are, and you're going to do what's best for the majority of your voters. That's the people we need, you know?
Yep.
And
And
yeah,
that's where you can make good connections with people in your neighborhood, in your PTO, in your kids' play group, whatever it is. You can make good connections with people talking about some of these real common sense issues. And especially if you have younger children, ask their teacher, does consent come up? Ask their daycare worker, does consent come up? Because you can talk about consent, like we said, where it has nothing to do with sex. And when you start to have those conversations and people get educated, like you said, Sarah, you learn from an expert, you can get educated about it. It's not that scary. It's
mm-mm.
only scary when they are telling you what it is and it's something you don't understand. So then
Yeah.
you're ripe to take in that information without having your own info to back it up.
When I ran for county council, I didn't know a whole lot. I knew a little bit, and I just kept learning from everybody. All these great people just kept sharing their information with me. And now I'm always sharing information with other people. So, I mean, I just a few years ago, I knew nothing about local. I didn't know about state house, state senate. I didn't know about county council commissioners. I knew none of that stuff. I was just busy being a full-time teacher and parent, and now I know a lot. So, yeah, don't act like you not knowing everything should be the reason to not run. And one more thing I want to say about Gary Byrne. Sorry, it seems like if I'm picking on him, I'm not trying to. I just know a lot about him. He wanted the school boards to be in charge of this. His wife, Angie Byrne, is on the school board at North Harrison, where my kids attend. So I'm pretty sure that they would have eliminated the consent language at my school. So
Absolutely. And that's and the when we talk about something like sex education and how closely tied it is to politics, the other piece of that puzzle that passed in Indiana this session is the partisan school board vote. So Gary Byrne saying something like, well, it should be up to local control, school boards should decide, knowing that school boards in Indiana are about to get most likely much more Republican than they currently are. And he knew that a lot of places would be unwilling to adopt this kind of sex ed curriculum. So now, as a part of this law, it's state mandated that consent has to be taught. But still, so much of it is up to individual school boards. So this kind of campaign to misinform students starts at the local level. And that is why getting partisan school boards. And so if y'all are not familiar, partisan school boards means you're declaring Democrat or Republican when you go run for a school board position. It's never been done that way because it shouldn't be that way. They should not be political positions. And Indiana now, because this bill passed Indiana by just one vote, y'all. If Governor Braun signs it into law, Indiana is only going to become the 5th state that has partisan school boards. And that is because the vast majority of states in the US have understood there should be nothing political. And these school board members should not be beholden to campaign donors and political party agendas. They should be beholden to their community, which is why the party of local control, the local government, wanting national politics to come into their school boards is again, it's a very interesting dichotomy. It really doesn't seem to make any sense. It's
Yeah,
very
we should keep
conflicting.
politics out of our schools. We should protect our
Hmm.
children and let them be educated, and let the educators that have been trained,
The experts.
the experts, let them teach our children.
Hmm.
We don't need political people with secret, scary agendas coming in and telling us what to do and spreading fake, false fears about our
Yeah.
children, like litter boxes in classrooms and stuff like they
Which,
love to do.
yeah,
So yeah, I saw this one coming, and I don't
they've
think
been
it's been
trying for a
signed yet.
while. It finally
I think
passed.
all that needs to do is Mike Braun sign it into law, and then
Yeah.
there's going to be all this gatekeeping on who can get on the ballot. So
Hmm.
like in my county, we won't gatekeep you if you want to run for school board as a Democrat, but there are no Democrats that have won in our county right now. It's 100% Republican. So
Hmm.
they know that getting a good person that actually cares about the children running as a D is very little chance of winning. That's why they want to make it partisan. Also, there were good Republicans that want to protect children that will want to get on the ballot as Republicans, and the chair of your party can use gatekeeping methods to keep you off and
Yeah.
can get just the people that they're going to listen to their 50-year plan agenda for defunding schools. They can make sure those people get on.
Yeah.
And it sounds so conspiratorial, but I'm seeing it happen in real life. I've had it happen when I tried to help the school board down here, so I know it's true, at least in Harrison County. um and I fear it's going to happen a lot of I think it's going to get worse before it gets better in Indiana, but hey, we're going to keep fighting and
We're
keep
going to
trying.
keep fighting. And what I've been saying is that if this bill passes, okay, everybody's a Republican. Everybody's a Republican. And then you still have to go out and do your research on name recognition, because
I
I'm
know, if you want to run for school board and your area is completely Republican, either don't vote in the primary or vote as Republican, right?
yep.
Because they'll use that as gatekeeping. If you vote Democrat in the primary, they can see whether you voted Democrat or R. They can't tell how you voted on that ballot, but they can know whether you're R or a D. So if you want to run for school board and your county is mostly Republican, you need to vote Republican primary.
Uh-huh. Yep. There you go. Solved it. We just fixed it.
But you have to do it for like 5 elections or something like that.
I think it's only two. I
Is
think
it
it's
2?
I
Okay,
think
that's
it's only
better.
two. It's
I
like
think
two
they're
out of the
changing
last
it.
three.
I heard they're trying to make it even harder.
Oh, of course they are.
I've heard the Republicans on the Republican side are making more gatekeeping, where the Democrats on the Democrat side are making less gatekeeping, because they get to pick how much gatekeeping they want, how much they can stop people. So I've heard from people, but I don't know for sure, that it's getting harder now.
Oh, they're going to want to make it harder, of course, because
They got
it
to
just
hand pick those people. They got
it
to be
fits
in
their
charge. They
agenda.
got to
Yep.
rule over everything.
Mhm. Yep. So so we're happy at least that the consent piece is back in.
Good job,
But
everybody.
we never should have had to fight for it in the
No,
first place, is really
this should not
where
have.
it comes
No.
from.
Mm-mm.
And when you start, you talk about like conspiratorial, during this talk about, yes, thank you, Nate. Yep, the past two primaries. When you talk about the things that you can kind of see coming together when you start to put puzzle pieces together, you look at a state like Indiana really wanting to scroll back sex education and make it very, very limited. And then you also hear out of DC that the White House is having conversations about wanting to increase the birth rate and talking about a baby
Oh yeah,
boom
don't they want to give
bonus.
$5,000
Yeah,
to
if you
people for
have a
having
baby or
kids? Which,
something,
guys, you will blow through that $5,000 so fast. Just
it ain't
FYI,
nothing. Don't take the 5 grand.
kids are
It's not worth
expensive.
it. It's not worth it, trust me. And to see again, so we have the White House, we need to incentivize people to have babies. We have a state like Indiana rolling back sex education, wanting consent to not be a part of it.
And
And
women's health, we've lost our health care
we've lost
rights. It's
healthcare.
dangerous now for women in Indiana to have children, or
Yep.
more dangerous.
And so if you can't have an abortion, you don't understand consent, you don't understand how pregnancy works or sex works, you're going to have more babies. And so you kind of see all of this coming together. It's not really a crazy conspiracy when it all makes sense, when you look at all the pieces coming together. And then at the same time, you have the state of Indiana and the federal government removing funding for subsidized childcare, for pre-K, for Medicaid, for all of the things that you need to actually be able to have children and remain financially stable to have children and healthy to have children. They're pulling all of that funding back, and then they're like, why aren't people having babies? We just don't understand it. You idiots. You idiots. It's so obvious why people are not having children. We do not make it easy to have children. And this is not a women's issue or a family issue. It is an economic issue. And this is all we have to do is just point to the data, y'all. When you look at other populations with supportive family policies, supportive child policies, they economically perform better over time. So we are absolutely not having the right conversation when we talk about wanting to incentivize people to have children.
Yeah.
You incentivize them to have kids by making it easier to have kids.
Yeah. I'm very happy I'm a mom of 3 kids. They're expensive, but I'm very glad. And I'm very lucky because my husband has a great job. But preschool was expensive. I had to pay for preschool. I would have liked to have paid for like a 5-day-a-week preschool, but I couldn't. I paid for when they were 3, 2-day a week. When they were 4, 3-day a week.
Yep.
And I was very thankful when they could start kindergarten and I didn't have to pay for that.
Yes, same. And
If we had some type of, now people that are lower income in Indiana can get assistance to go to something like a Head Start program or something, but of course they're attacking that right now too. So I don't know whether
funding's been rolled back.
I don't know whether that's going to be an option soon or not, but there are programs right now for lower income people, but again, those are being stripped away at the state and national level. So we'll see what we're going to get in a few months or a year. But having kids is expensive and it's really hard, mostly on mothers. During the pandemic, I had to quit my job as a teacher, which I love teaching. It got too hard with my twins that were 2, with childcare, with the scary virus of what is going to happen when people get COVID. Am I going to give my parents COVID that are older? I was forced to quit a job I loved because of childcare issues and just because of the pandemic itself and the weird, scary situation we were in. And I'm glad I'm not a teacher anymore. I like doing this. I've grown a lot. I wouldn't have known you right now, Corinne, if all this hadn't happened to me.
Right?
But I need to acknowledge, what about all of the families where they can't quit?
Yes, and they
can't
don't
have a one parent making the money. Life is hard for them.
And I got some data from a friend of mine who works in early childhood. They work doing they really just try to find childcare placement for families because it is so difficult to find.
And it's so expensive. Like daycare is so expensive.
And so the average in Indiana, you're looking at $150 to $400 per week per child.
$150 to $400 per week for
daycare? For daycare.
Per kid.
The average infant cost is $300. So for an infant, it's $300 a week. And this is so, and even with that cost, there is still a huge shortage of childcare availability. So people are paying it because they have to pay it, but
because there's no other option.
There's no other option. But when you talk about the things that actually could be done to encourage people to have more children, you don't have to make them stupid. You don't have to trick them into getting pregnant by not talking about birth control and consent and hiding.
Let the women know sex. Or what's going on. Let's just
then they'll just get pregnant on accident and then problem solved, right? It's like, no, you could actually let women be adults and choose to have children because you've provided the infrastructure to have children. It's truly mind blowing that they're just like, I know what we'll do, y'all. We'll make them real dumb. Yeah, we'll make them real dumb, real poor. And we'll say $5,000, we'll dangle it in front of their faces, and then they'll get pregnant on accident and it'll be a nice bonus. It's like, no, let people choose to have children.
And right now, the birth rate in America is going down because in I think it's 22 states, women have lost their right to health care. So it's not as safe for women to get pregnant. Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio are 3 of those states. So I know people that are putting their plans to get pregnant on hold
Same.
because they live in a state that might not protect the woman if there's childbirthing complications, which having children is dangerous. I've almost died before.
Yeah.
It's
It,
dangerous. We need all the help we can get. We don't need politicians that don't know women's body parts being in charge because they think they're pro-life and they're going to protect a baby. They don't understand what's going on with us.
and
Um,
there are plenty of people that are saying, no, I'll wait, or I won't have kids at all because
or
it's
they're
not safe
moving.
for me.
I know
Yeah.
of people that are moving to a blue state like Illinois where they can get appropriate care and then starting a family. And those people we want in our state.
We want them here.
We want them here.
Yeah. And
We
that's,
want their children going to our schools. We want to educate them. We want them to get jobs here. We want them to grow and our communities to thrive. So you can't dangle the money, but then say, but we don't really care if the woman dies or not.
no, we sure
We don't
don't.
really care.
Mm-mm.
We think you're probably too stupid to know that you're good, that you might die in Indiana. So we'll just give you some money and then whoops,
Yep. And
that's
that's
what they're
why
doing.
when we talk about fighting for something like keeping a requirement to teach consent in the bill, it's so frustrating because that is energy that should be spent on something else. It should be spent on addressing childcare shortages, our lack of pre-K resources, our lack of maternal care and OBGYNs and hospitals and labor and delivery units. I mean, Indiana has lost so many labor and delivery units that if you are somebody who is a couple of hours away from a qualified OBGYN to take care of you when one of those complications arise, it makes sense that you would not subject yourself to getting pregnant because the risk is too high. So it's like, let's put our energy to that, not
Yeah.
arguing about consent, which never should have been up for debate in the first place.
You all in Harrison County, where I live in Corden, our hospital in the county, our one county hospital, we lost our OBGYN.
Mm-hmm.
We have none. So if you have birthing complications now and you dial 911 and you live in Harrison County, please ask to go to Floyd County or whatever is your closest. Go to a hospital that has OBGYN services because ours does not.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that reason is because OBGYNs do not want to work in Indiana anymore. We've lost a bunch of them. Even Hoosiers that are thinking about becoming doctors choose not to become an OBGYN. They pick another field. So it's a big problem across the state, and it's happening in all red states where we've lost this right. We should be talking about that, Corinne, but we're having to talk about freaking consent in sex education because they're doing so many horrible things we can barely keep up. And that's part of their plan too, I think. Throw out so many bad, terrible things, let them stop a couple of them, and then let's pass the majority
We'll
of
pass the rest of
terrible.
them.
And
Mm-hmm.
it is hard. I do have dark days. Don't you? I,
Yeah.
I do have dark days because I know too much about what our state government is doing, and I don't know it all. But I just think of you. I just think of Josh Lowry. I just think of
The
Michelle
good
Higgs and Tim
people.
Peck, and I just think of Jesse Brown and all these amazing people that are working so hard to stop this. And then I just make the dark thoughts go away, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do an episode with Corinne and we'll talk about it and maybe that'll help. I don't know,
That'll help. It'll make the
honestly.
rest of the day better.
But it is tough, you all.
And there is a great, there's a great story about maternity care deserts that is on Indiana Capitol Chronicle, and it references the Harrison County closure
Wow.
because let's see, I was trying to find the number. Since 2020, there's been over a dozen maternity units, maternity obstetric departments that have closed around the state of Indiana. And that's just that's just since 2020. And so it's pretty scary, and it has a direct correlation to an increase of infant mortality and maternal mortality. And infant mortality, y'all, is anytime a baby passes away within their first year of life. And that is generally tied to pregnancy complications, lack of good prenatal care, et cetera. And so Indiana has an incredibly high infant and maternal mortality rate, especially for Black women. We have a very, very high rate, and that directly correlates to prenatal care being unavailable, sex education and pregnancy education not being available, people not knowing how to care for themselves when they're pregnant. All of this goes together and it really creates an environment that's dangerous for women. And $5,000 ain't going to fix that, right? You have to fix the system. You have to make the
We should like
system.
add up how much it costs to have a baby in the hospital.
$5,000 that won't even cover it. No,
No.
won't even cover it.
No. So if you are a doctor or if you're listening and you know like an expert on sex education, would you mind reaching out to them? I'm gonna try to find some. I have been trained to teach sex ed, but I'm not a doctor. We can get Tim Peck on, and he will do a good job if we can't find anybody that's more specialized in
Mhm.
the sex education or an OBGYN or somebody, and we will do a I want to do a show with you where it could be 15 years old people or parents. So
Yeah.
15 years or older, we think the stuff we will talk about would be appropriate for a 15-year-old, and we will do the teaching. So if you are embarrassed or don't feel comfortable or don't feel knowledgeable giving your 15, 16, 17-year-old sex education, and you're concerned that you're not getting great quality education wherever they are, have them just watch the episode. You can watch the episode first, and then you can just have them watch it and then just say you got any questions. But we want to do this show in the next few weeks if we can pull it off. I think we can, because it is a need,
Yes.
and people are scared to talk about it because we get called groomers.
Yes, we get called groomers, but we're not afraid to talk about it. We're
Not,
going to
I'm
talk
not
about it.
afraid. If somebody
Nope,
wants to throw that out at me, I'm comfortable
that's fine.
explaining how I'm not scared of that.
No,
Um,
I know.
we got to work together, girl.
We will. This was a good conversation and very timely. Very timely considering it's right at the end of the Indiana session. But we're seeing, we see legislation like this happening all over the country, and it's just so obvious. Every time I go to these maps, like these statistic maps, it's just so obvious where people are having the most unintended pregnancies or the most STIs. It's the places that you don't teach about it. So it's, when we want to make people's lives better, we can also at Project Next work to fill those gaps of information that exist and empower people to have these conversations in their life, because there is a very powerful undercurrent of shame in the US, especially, which is we're like a very pure culture in a way. It's really weird. There is so much darkness in our
like
sexual
violence is
content, and
okay.
violence is okay, and sexual
Shouting out
content
terrible
and
things online
movies
is
and
okay, but
all that's
talking about
okay.
sex, woo,
Oh God. Yep.
yeah,
And
it's
so we
definitely a
have
disconnect.
we have all of this like online. Like you can very easily find, any kind of porn you want to find online, but you can't talk to your kid about why they should use a condom. And so there's just this real disconnect that's happening. We're very prudish in a lot of ways in the US when it comes to talking about sex. We're not able to do it, and it's only to our detriment and to the detriment of our kids.
I adore you so freaking much, Corinne Straight.
I love you too.
Guys, if you want to know more about what's happened at the State House, check out her TikToks, her Instagram, her Facebook. I got to go back and check on all of them. She really explains exactly what happened in just a couple minutes because we don't have unlimited amounts of time here. I'm so
Try to
thankful
be
for
as quick as
you.
I can.
I'm so thankful for you. You helped me on my dark days. I'm so thankful we're friends. I love your show. I love being a part of your show. So thank you for letting me be your assistant on your geniusness.
Thank
And
you, Sarah. This was
let
fun.
us know if this is something that interests you. We think it will be interesting, but we haven't really talked to a lot of people. So comment if you've listened to the show and you would like your teenager or you would like the information on how to teach sex ed.
Mhm.
We are planning that, and then share it with other people, your friends that have teenagers. We definitely know there's a need. There's a lot of, I think we sense it in our boys, fear of having a relationship because of all the conflicting messages that they're receiving.
Mhm.
They don't want to have a relationship because maybe they'll do something wrong. And all we have to do is really explain consent and the truth and what's going on with their bodies to help give them less fear and more practice. Dating in a healthy way is good for teenagers. Um, I'm not saying, 13-year-olds should go date. I'm just saying you like people. Usually,
Mhm.
most people like people, and we need to give them healthy tools for practicing relationships.
Yeah. Yep,
We
it's a
want
skill. It's a life skill, and it should be, just like handling your money, financial planning, all these things that go together. It just should be another part of a regular education that our kids are getting.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. We got Brian's show on Monday.
Yep.
He's been talking a lot about training, special forces training. He's about ready to start his missions, I think.
Oh, okay.
I'm so excited. The show's is such a good point. I can't wait to hear what he says next. That'll be on Monday. Tim's gonna be with us next week some, so that'll be nice. And I'm also doing on location live shows. Have you seen any of those?
Yes, they look great. Are you having fun?
Yesterday I got to talk to the Pride group of Washington County. I love those people so
That's so
much. Those
great.
people that start Pride groups to let people know that we love our Pride communities. It's so
Mhm.
important, especially in rural communities where they're feeling hate.
Yep.
I just love that a lot. So, yeah. So shout out to all Pride communities, all people that help with like your Pride festivals in June and are working on it. And I just have so much love for
All
those
the planning
people.
is happening now. Yeah.
So that was my favorite part, was talking to that group of people, and they all like joined behind me, and they were all happy to just like be on camera, and just a couple of them spoke. It was so adorable. So yeah, you can check our lives if you want to, but I went on location yesterday. It was fun. All right. Love you guys. Corinne.
Love you, Sarah. Thank you.
Bye everybody.
Bye,
Share the
y'all.
show, YouTube, subscribe, please. Project
Yep.
Next.
Podcast.
Bye.